Hey guys, Brassfax with the Nova Group here. You've likely been seeing this weird setup in the last couple of my videos. This is a flip-off mount, that's what it's called, paired with a 3x primary arms prism and a disgusting Vortex Spitfire, which I pawned off of Hop. Shot it for just shy of 1,000 rounds, number of different settings, mostly just out of a curiosity, so I don't view this as a full review. But the premise with this thing is pretty simple. Take your 2.26 mount, make it slightly taller, make the cutout wider and larger such that a prism can see through it, and done, you got ACOG red dot at home. All of you understand what a piggyback dot and prism does, so I think to better explain this product, it makes more sense to explain what this does better than an ACOG red dot. For starters, it's going to be cheaper. Well, ultimately this is a mount, and in theory you could make this egregiously expensive by putting the most expensive red dot on the top and literally pairing it with an ACOG. The cheapest combo kind of fits this thing the best. A 3XPA prism, the mount, some flavor of Hall Sun 403 or Sig Romeo or whatever Chinese dot you want. That ends up being $119 for the mount, $170 for the dot, $300 for the prism, for a total of $589 for a fully fledged dot and prism combo. This is notably cheaper, though far less compact than the Hero Mod 5X prism mount, which by the way only works with the primary arms 5X prism. It's also going to be more durable in theory because the dot and prism are separate, so destruction or loss of one will not affect the other one. And the dot more often than not will act as a sacrificial shroud to the prism and vice versa. With an ACOG or any other piggyback system, if the primary optic goes that the piggyback is sitting on, the whole stack obviously loses 0. Though in practice, I would really only compare this durability-wise to something like the OEM primary arms mount, which is terrible, or the Hero Mod mount. This thing is obviously going to lose to a drop-off compared to an ACOG in terms of durability, even with this added benefit. Especially since this mount is a sort of wider, enlarged version of a Unity mount. The dot itself is also objectively, yes, I said it, superior to a piggyback-style pistol dot. Because pistol dots are just not as good as straight body red dots. But that's okay because we put them on handguns and when we throw them way out there, it's not a big deal. Why? Because pistol dots have major parallax, are often open emitter in design, and also have visual warping. It's why I can't take people seriously who run as a primary optic only an Acro P2. It's just not good. I don't care how good it looks. Here you can mount a fully fledged T2 pattern dot at the top, and it's just going to perform much better than your pistol flavors. The dot itself also sits notably lower than a dot on an ACOG by a pretty noticeable amount, since the mount itself is 2.69. Nice. Sidebar, this is a CAC left-hand eject upper receiver. This is not a gassing issue with why it's malfunctioning so often. I think it's just kind of crunchy in the receiver. It's not moving very smoothly despite being cleaned and lubed. And as you can see, there's just malfunctions galore with full spec ammunition. No, it's not the FRT. For about half the video, I'm using a regular lower receiver. My God, if there's ever a case for needing a forward assist, this gun is the example. Anyways, back to the flip-off mount. The only real downside I see with this product is you're about $300 shy of an actual new ACOG, and even less compared to a used one. The mount is 60-61, not 70-75, and all the marketing material with this thing mounts the prism lower than absolute height behind the mount because it looks good, but that actually requires a very expensive, costly, invasive surgery to move your cheekbone, which will somewhat invalidate your cost efficiency with this setup. You really do need to use something like an absolute mount that I have the prism sitting on here. But when it's that high, some of your objective ends up being shrouded behind the mount itself. Not something you'll notice in your field of view looking through the prism, but it's going to cut in the available light going into the objective, so dusk, dawn, shadows, and urban setting, and all that stuff is going to be slightly worse, much like how kill flashes need to be taken off as these situations arise, but not something I notice in the day. And perhaps most importantly at all, though I question why you're buying this if you have nods, this isn't the best night vision setup. The prism, because it has to be slightly higher, like I mentioned, is going to approximate something like a Unity magnifier setup, except you can't actually remove the magnifier. Not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things. People are using TaO2s all day, but it is noticeable, right? It's going to not be the best night vision passive setup because your nods are going to clonk into the back of the prism all the time. I think an interesting way to interrogate this idea is, would anyone replace their ACOG setup with this? No, not really. But would people consider, especially those that have a Prism sight already on hand, consider kind of building up to this instead of buying an ACOG? Yeah, I think so, especially since, as I mentioned, it's a good bit cheaper, and interestingly enough, it does come with some notable upsides. I think primary of which is that dot is just that little bit lower and begins to start to feel like using a 2.26 optic instead of that sort of floaty head that you have with an ACOG RMR or whatever. So, yeah, I'm not replacing my ACOGs with this, but I also think it's actually kind of a neat idea. Alright, hopefully this was interesting for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you, I don't know, in a month and a half when we upload the next video on this channel. Alright, bye.